And Sojola here. In this video, we'll be basically discussing the geopolitics of the South China Sea, right? Now, basically, the past 30 years, China has gone through an economic miracle, right? Basically, pulling out about 800 million people out of poverty, right? In the process, developing world class infrastructure, right? Increasing political influence all over the world, and creating economic ties with a number of countries around the world, right? Creating famous projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, right? So, in the process of this increase in political influence, right, and posture, right, China started to have border disputes with its neighbors, right? Now, China has about 17 border or territorial disputes with its neighbors. These range from Russia, Japan, India, right, Nepal, Mongolia, right, Tibet, right, just to mention a few. These are few countries that China has disputes with over, let's say, a certain territory or a certain border where it's drawn or whatever, right? But in this particular video, we'll try to understand the certain tensions that they have with their neighbors, right, that they have in the South China Sea. Now, let us look at the South China Sea first, right? Now, the South China Sea, number one, has a lot of oil and gas reserves which are found in the ocean, right? So there's a lot of oil and gas reserves if drilled and let's say taken through an exploration process, a lot of gas and oil will be found, right? Another claim is that a lot of minerals, right, are also found, right? Minerals like rare earth metals, right, are also found. Another uh, point of contention with the South China Sea is that there is a lot of fishing resources, right, that you can find there. So it's good for fishing. You can find a lot of fish which can sustain and produce food for the whole planet, right? Another thing about the South China Sea is that it has a trade route, right, in which there's trade worth about 3.37 trillion US dollars that passes through there, right? So basically, it is quite a resource full part of the world, right? Which has a lot of trade which is passing through that area, right? Another important thing about the South China Sea is that about 40% of all the liquefied natural gas, right, pass through this sea, right, towards China, right, to go basically power their manufacturing industries. So basically, the South China Sea is a resource rich area, right, which has a trade routes which carry a lot of goods throughout the year. Now, according to a UN convention known as the Law of the Sea, right, an exclusive economic zone, right, is about 200 nautical miles in length, right? In which a specific area or a specific country has exclusive economic rights to it. So basically, the law says that all the countries, right, which are basically close to oceans or close to seas, right, have the economic right to access the economic exclusive zone, right, which is about 200 nautical miles in length, right? So now, when we speak of the nine dash theory that China has introduced in its maps, right, it is basically a map which is drawn using nine dashes, right, which basically encircles the South China Sea and basically not consider other exclusive economic zones of other countries, right? So what in basically it says that the nine dash line states that the South China Sea belongs to China in its entirety, right? Disconsidering the UN Convention, right, for exclusive economic zones, right? So this is where the tension and the disputes, the border disputes, comes in with its neighbors that you find around the South China Sea. Now, there are two main countries that China has disputes over. Number one, it is the Philippines, right? Now, the Philippines are in dispute with China over fishing rights, right? Now, this dispute started in 2013, right? And it went through until 2016, right? And in this case, Viet, the Philippines, right, basically opened a case in The Hague in the Netherlands under the International Criminal Court, right? Basically complaining about the bullying of China in the South China Sea, right? Philippines went to an extent to go procure BrahMos 1 supersonic missiles from India, right, as a way to protect its economic exclusive zone from the hostilities of China or the aggressive nature of China, as people would claim, right? If we look at another country, Vietnam is also hotly contested. Yes, and the Philippines pulled out of the Belt and Road Initiative over these tensions that they have with China, right? Another country that I want us to look at is Vietnam, right? Vietnam had disputes and tensions over oil and gas exploration rights, right? Vietnam also procured a supersonic missile which is made in India, known as the BrahMos 1, right? It's basically an anti ship missile. It can shoot down ships that you find in the ocean, right? So this shows the level of tension which exists between China and the number of countries that you find in the South China Sea. I can name a number of countries. Brunei has an issue with that. Indonesia, Malaysia is just to mention a few, right? But in the process of all of these tensions, right, with China, China goes on and basically builds islands, right? Reclaims islands and basically turns them into military outposts that can be used in case of a breakout in war in that region, right? So China is believed to be very aggressive around the South China Sea, right? Because of the number of resources which exist there, right? And how they can be beneficial to China. But the tensions which exist there are complicated, right? I won't be able to explain them in this one video, but there are serious disputes in the South China Sea with a number of countries in which the tensions are rising, right?